Thanks for joining us today for this webinar all about the VersaSTUDIO BN-20, which is the only machine of its type, really. And what we're going to do is kind of pick apart a bunch of sort of parts about the machine, how it works, applications, and all the technical side of it as well, because I'm joined by Matt.
Morning. Yeah, so morning everybody, afternoon everybody, wherever you're joining us from. So yeah, I'm Matt. My role at Roland is I manage our field service team, as well as getting out and doing fixes and repairs and installs and so on myself as well. So we have plenty of these in pieces at different times. Hopefully we'll be able to answer any questions anyone's got.
Brilliant. So as I said, Matt's from Roland Care and I'm from the Roland Academy. So we'll be sort of hosting the session today, and hopefully between us we should be able to answer any questions or anything that you have. First of all, just a little bit about, oops, Matt sounds a bit faint, just okay. I'll stick the mic in the middle so hopefully you can hear us both okay. As with any webinar, just a little bit of a heads up that there can be a little bit of a lag between the video and the audio, just because it's live, okay, so it's got to zip its way around the world. And especially when we do some screen sharing, when we look at VersaWorks and things later. The chat box that a bunch of you have already found, that's for you guys to use. So if you have any questions, please type them into the chat box, but put a question mark at the end because it marks it as a question in the webinar platform then. And when we can either try and answer those as they come up, or we can take a look at them at the end if we miss any as well. So the plan will be to go through a bunch of content together, and then we'll have a big question and answers session at the end, because I'm sure that you guys will have lots to ask. So just use the chat box. If we see questions pop up throughout the webinar, then we'll try and answer them as they come up, just because it might be about something that we're talking about. If not, as I said, type it in there and we'll readdress all of those at the end. And so there's nothing missed, I hope. We've got an hour and a half-ish sort of time booked out, but we'll see how we get on. It depends how much we've got to go through and how many questions you have. So we've got a little bit of a presentation on screen that hopefully you guys can see. At the moment, you should be able to see something on your screen that says VersaSTUDIO Versatile. What we're going to do is just go through a quick overview of the product. We're going to go through the parts and accessories, talk a little bit about the different applications that you can create with your BN-20. We'll take a look at the utility. Then Matt the man's going to take over and we're going to go through some of the maintenance and care and looking after your machine. We'll look at some of the common issues that sometimes pop up with people, and then, as I said, we'll have a big question session at the end. We can also take a look at VersaWorks, as I said. We'll look at the utility, and we'll take a look at design as well, if any of you have any questions about output to the machine. So, without further ado, the BN-20 has been around for, I don't know, just before I started with Roland. I think I've been with Roland for about 7 years. But it is the only machine of its type. It's a 20-inch wide print and cut device, and it's a great startup machine. But it's also a great machine to have alongside a bunch of other kit as well. Sometimes people have a bigger production facility, but they sometimes have a BN-20 just for doing a specific application, maybe for doing garments or for doing their decals or for a specific ink color as well, maybe for the white ink or the metallic ink. As we said, it is desktop, so as you can see on the image on the left-hand side there, it can sit on top of your desk in your office environment or in your bedroom or wherever you might have it, or it can have a stand as well, so it can be a standalone machine. When you buy any of the Roland products, everything's included with the machine. So this is just a list of some of the stuff that comes in the box when you buy a BN-20. So all your power cords, your cleaning sticks, your wiper blades, operation manuals, just about everything that you need to use the machine. So you should have everything included. There are a few consumables that throughout the life of the machine you will need to purchase additionally. We can talk through those again in a bit, such as maybe your cutting strip, the wiper blade or the felt, and maybe your cutting blades as well. And obviously your ink, and you use up all your inks. So taking a look at the actual bits and bobs of the machine, there's a few stickers on the front, as it shows you at the top there, just over here. So we've got the Roland Intelligent Pass Control, the RIPC, which to put it in its most simple terms, is how it blends the stripes as it prints. Obviously, it's a lot more technical than that, but it's how when you're printing with passes and the printhead's going back and forth across the machine, it's how it blends those passes together to give you a nice seamless print. Obviously, we've got the name of the machine, and we've got the sub power off as well, the button on the right hand side of the machine, and then you've got the mains switch round the back as well. The front cover is just here, a little lever on it, with a little sensor so that it knows when it's open and closed as well. And if we take a look around the back of the machine, we've got the drain ink cartridge, which is a removable tray that's around the back of the machine. We've got the loading lever, which lowers the pinch wheels to pinch your material to pull it through. And then we've got the main switch, and we've got the Ethernet cable, the USB cable, so that you can connect to your computer. So taking a look at those in a little bit closer up here on the screen, we've got the print and cut carriage. So we've got the blade that's part of the carriage that moves back and forth to do the printing. We've got the maintenance cover. So this is the cover here that you can get into the machine to be able to access the printhead when you need to do cleaning. Around the back of the machine, we've got the load lever, which, as I said, just puts down those pinch wheels. The bar at the back, the media loading bar, which holds all your different materials when you're printing. The pinch wheels with the media clamps on the side of them. We'll cover those off as a whole part in a little bit, and then the connector around the back. That's pretty much it. The only thing that's not mentioned there, I guess, is the inks. So sticking out the side over here, we've got ink cartridges. And in the BN-20, you actually have 5 ink slots. It's a little bit different compared to some of our other machines, which are normally 4 or 8 ink cartridges. With the 5 color, you've got CMYK always as a default. And then you've got 3 choices for the others. You can have an extra magenta, you can have a metallic, or you can have a white cartridge. But you would choose that at the time of purchase of your machine, or when you're choosing the configuration. It could be pretty tricky to change over down the line. It's not an impossible thing to do, but it can cause issues and can be costly or tricky to do. So in our BN-20 here at the moment, I think we've got the metallic configuration. We find that the metallic ink in the BN-20 is a nice add-on, give you something that not many people can offer. And as you can see in the machine at the moment, we've just got a sheet of some heat transfer material with a bunch of decals or badges printed out at the moment. So as I mentioned, the BN-20, it does absolutely everything that our other printers do. It's just smaller, pretty much. So it's actually got exactly the same technology as, for example, like a VersaCam, say VSI range, or even our higher range, the Soljet Pro 4 XR640, is just one of these on steroids. So this is just the baby version. It's got the same printhead as the XR640. It prints and it cuts. So again, saving you having 2 devices. It does everything in one device, which saves you on space. It also saves you on sort of the hassle of having to take out a print and put it in another device for cutting. And it prints on the same materials as well. So the BN-20 is often used in the smaller end of the market. So maybe the smaller sign shop, or somebody who's got a business on the side, or maybe they're running it out of their spare garage or their spare bedroom. But also from sort of design agencies and things that want to do in-house work. For also the big guys who want to have a smaller machine to do certain work on the side. And it can print onto everything that our bigger machines can. So as you see on the screen here, we just put a bunch of different examples of applications up there for you. So wallpaper, posters, banners, stickers, vehicle graphics, motorbike graphics, heat transfer, as we said, for doing garment work, but also things like tote bags or anything else that's sort of textile based. Window graphics, banners, stickers, full-on signage, labels, just about anything. If you start looking into materials, anything that is an eco-solvent friendly or eco-solvent printable material that you can get in the right size for the BN-20, you'll be able to print onto, just about. Obviously, there are sort of thickness limitations as well. So just to sort of open it up and say that, yeah, there is a lot more that often you can do with a machine than people think. Also, you're not restricted by the width, because you can print in tiles, for example, and do them in strips for things like wallpaper as well. There might be complementary machinery that you want to get with your BN-20, for example, a laminator. You can do it by hand as well, or maybe something along the lines of a laser cutter, and it may be a plotter on the side if you just want to do standalone cutting as well. But otherwise, the BN-20 will do just about anything that any of our other machines will do. And once you start looking into the range of materials, I think you'll sort of start to realize just how much there is. If you do use white ink as well in your machine, that means that you can start to print onto your clear materials and back the color with white ink. You can also print onto things like silver vinyl or gold vinyl, and you can put the white ink down to block out the silver or gold, and then leave spaces where you want the silver or the gold to shine through. So it really does open up a lot of possibilities. So that's the machine. One of the biggest differences that you'll see compared to our other machines is that it doesn't have a menu panel. So to keep the machine nice and compact and small and lightweight, Matt and I carried this in here just a minute ago and shoved it onto this cabinet behind us. It's almost, well, it's portable. All it needs is power and a connection to your PC or laptop if you are taking it portable. So instead of having a menu panel, it's got something called a utility, which is a little bit of software that comes with the machine that you just download onto your computer. And that is basically a menu panel in digital format on your screen. So what we can do is we can take a look at the utility and go through some of the different options that are in there. On your screen at the moment, you should be able to see just a sort of home screenshot of the utility and two of the tests that you can do within the utility, but I'll get back to talk through those in a minute. So what I'm going to do is just jump over onto the utility. Just give me a moment so that we can talk through the different parts of it. So hopefully, I'm just going to actually adjust the size of this a second. There we go. Hopefully you can just see the utility on your screen now rather than the presentation that we were just going through. And as you can see, the sort of the default page that opens up when you open it up is the ink page. So this just gives you a sort of digital reading of how much ink there is inside the cartridges inside the machine. As you can see, a lot of ours are running low. I think we need to place another order, but it is a kind of rough amount. So if I pull one out a minute, you can see on the cartridge down the bottom somewhere here is a little tab that sticks out, and that's how it knows how much ink there is. Put that back in. So I think is it when the tab pokes out or pokes in?
So the way it works is that when there's ink in the cartridge, the cartridges themselves are basically a plastic box like you've seen, and inside that there's a foil bag. And as the ink is used and the foil bag depletes, then what eventually happens is a little tab pops out the side of the cartridge. There's a switch inside the machine, and at that point the machine will start beeping. Your BN-20 utility will pop up and say, run out of ink. It will pause the job. If you then put a new cartridge back in there, it will carry on from where it left off. But it does mean that you can use the cartridges until they're completely empty. You're not wasting loads of ink, or each colour is individual as well. So it's not like some desktop home printers or whatever, where you buy a cartridge and all the colours are in one cartridge, and you've used all the yellow and you have to throw out all the others. We don't have to do that with this. We can just switch the cartridge over on the colour that's been used, and away we go. The other thing that it's showing you on this screen as well, on the right hand side, is the waste ink amount. So in the back of the machine there's a tray where all the waste ink, when it does its cleaning and stuff, goes to. And yeah, if you grab that out, there's a nice little self-contained tray. Yeah, Yeah, it's a self-contained tray that, you know, when the machine is cleaning, that any of the excess ink and cleaning fluid works its way into that tray, and then that's the other indicator you can see on the screen, which when that's run out, you know, again the machine starts giving you warnings that it's running low, and you replace that as needed. When you do purchase a replacement waste tray, it comes with a nice kit of some gloves, a clear bag. You know, it's just a case of take it out, wrap it up, put it away, and dispose of it in, you know, accordance with you know, with your location and the waste procedures there.
Perfect. So that's the first tab, the ink tab. Again, as I said, it's just a bit of an overview. The ink amounts, it does only go up in sort of 20% increments, so you have to sort of take it with a little pinch of salt, but it is a good way of just checking how much ink you've got inside the machine. The next tab is the adjustment tab. And Matt, do you want to talk through some of these options?
Yeah, so again, these are now some options that the end user can use to absolutely get the very best out of the machine. So what we've got on the, and we'll cover some of these. If we don't cover them now, we'll cover some more of these in detail a bit further on. But the first one we've got at the top is a check nozzle condition. What this does is it prints a test pattern of the printhead. I'm going to run it, yeah. So it prints a nozzle pattern of the printhead. It's always useful to do at the start of each day or at the end of each day to make sure that your printers, you know, everything is performing and all the jets that are on each printhead are firing correctly. And it allows you to see any potential problems within the print or within, you know, the head pattern that could cause you problems in your print later on. Ideally, it prints it and it all looks nice and uniform and clean. If not, and you see the picture in the sort of black oval where you've got a nozzle missing, you've then got the option on the left-hand side of this tab now to clean the print heads. So the different levels of cleaning depending on the severity of the issue you're facing. Either start with a normal clean, then you've got a medium clean or a powerful clean. What that will allow you to do is potentially recover those couple of flaws that you can see on the head, and it will give you then the very best output when you come to print it. So very similar to your home desktop printer, it's a case of test print, looks perfect, or you need to do a clean, do another test print once you've done that. Ideally by then it's all looking good and you're ready to go. So that's the nozzle condition. We've then got a button which says bidirectional alignment. And this is, again, it's very important for getting the very best output of your print, and it's worth doing certainly on every different media type that you use, but also good practice to get into checking it once a week. The idea is that the print head on this is moving from left to right and right to left, and on each side it's printing. What the bidirectional alignment is doing is basically telling it when it's going out in one direction and printing the first row of stuff. The bidirectional alignment is configuring it so that when it comes back, it prints in exactly the same place. It's very important when you're printing fine text or fine shapes. If you ever see a sort of ghosting or double image, the chances are the bidirectional alignment will be set incorrectly. What this does, and it's a very simple procedure to set, it prints a series of lines, and it's as simple as picking the line that looks the best, taking the value from that line and inputting it onto the screen you see here.
Perfect, nice and easy. Next one I think was just the cleaning options again. Been put there, and then we've got
calibrate sheet feeding. Okay, so different materials, different thicknesses, different weights of the roll on the back, all have an effect on how easily or smoothly material will run through the machine. You know, the motor turns to push the material through, and as I said, depending on the thickness, the weight, many different factors, you know, the amount that is fed through can vary. And again, certainly this is for best practice. It's always worth doing at the start of a new roll, or if you change the material. What it does is it prints a series of grey boxes, and I don't know, yeah. It prints a series of grey boxes, which you can see on the screen in the calibration section. Again, it's very simple. It's looking at which one is the best pattern, and by that, where the join is, what you don't want is a white line, which means it's fed too much material through, and certainly you don't want a dark line, which means it hasn't quite fed enough through. And if this is set incorrectly, it can manifest itself in your print as getting either a white pinstriping effect through the print on each pass, or a black pinstriping effect. Again, so for best practice, you print these bars out, check which is the looks the nicest and the smoothest test, and then just simply enter that number back into the BN-20 utility.
Another thing that can affect, because it would be feeding a little bit too much or not quite enough between each pass, is if you're printing and you need to be very accurate in the size of your output and those values are incorrect, you might get a print that would be a little bit too long or a little bit too short. So if you do measure up your design and then you're trying to print something that needs to be exactly a specific size for a specific output, then that could make that incorrect. So that could be another good reason for doing that.
And sorry, as well, I was going to say that can also, in extreme circumstances, could potentially cause problems if you're doing printing then cutting, because obviously the length and the output is slightly different.
So as Matt said, you just enter the value on the screen once you've done the test. So do the test print and write the value in there. Quite refresh, just a minute, just refreshing the screen a minute. For you, there we go.
So again, a few more adjustments are left. We've got, so when it comes to cutting, we've got that blade there, Joe, blade. So the BN-20, I appreciate this is probably quite small on the screen, but the BN-20 uses the same blade holder as all of our other machines. You have again, I appreciate no one will be able to see this, but you have so you have a drag blade in the blade holder which sits inside the machine, and the machine drags it around the graphic, and in doing so, that's how it cuts the decal or the sticker out. When it comes to cutting, it's one of those, or setting blade depths and pressures and stuff. It's something that always seems confusing at first, and then you speak to people who have been doing it for a while, and it's all become very, very straightforward. But there's a number of factors at play which affect the quality of the cutting, and from that, the ease of weaving and removing the stickers from the roll of vinyl. So ideally, what we need to be able to do is cut just through the layer that we want to be able to cut through, and leave behind, without cutting all the way through on the back end as well. So a few different factors that affect it. One is the blade extension in the first instance. That's quite important to make sure that, what we don't want is the blade set so far out of the holder that it actually will cut all the way through the material, unless you're specifically trying to achieve that effect, of course. But there is a cutting strip behind, which the blade drops into, and if the blade is too extended, it will wear that cutting strip very, very more quickly, which is a consumable item. So getting the blade depth set correctly is very important, and there's lots of online guides and stuff to help do that. But generally, as a rule of thumb, the blade needs to be extended just enough to cut through what it is you're trying to cut through. There's another factor that then comes into play on the BN-20 utility, which is the force that the blade is being applied on the screen. There you go.
Just going to go back to reset the screen again. Sorry, jumping back and forth between different outputs here.
So what you can see there's a current cut force which is saved on the machine. You can increase that or decrease it, and then the actual cut speed that it's cutting to as well. Now in this screen here, if we were to now press the test cut, the machine will cut what you can see, that square and the circle, and then using a scalpel or a weaving tool, the idea is you should be able to pull the circle away from the square, and it leaves the square behind, and it's it all comes away nice and cleanly.
That was one from earlier.
So we've got the circle and the square in the corner, if you can see it there. If it's not, you may need to increase the blade pressure slightly. If it cuts all the way through, you can reduce the blade pressure slightly. And it's just a case of working that, or finding that sweet spot of the blade extension with the pressure setting to ensure that you're getting nice, clean and even cuts.
That's about it for the cutting. There is an option there to increase the amount of cut times as well. So maybe if you have, I showed you a graphic on the applications page there of motocross graphics, for example. Those films tend to be very thick, so you could cut with a slightly lower pressure, but twice, for example, so that it cuts once, goes back and cuts again to make sure that it's cut all the way through. But those are the only real options within the cut setting there for adjustment. And then as Matt said it, how you adjust the blade itself. A couple of other bits, like you might want to every now and again just take off the nose cone, which is the sort of protective cone that sits over the end of the blade. And you can just check that there's no dust or anything settled within the nib, give it a little clean. And maybe even if over time the bearing got a little bit sticky, you could put a little bit of a 3-in-1 oil or something like that in there just to loosen that up. But that's probably way down the line, I imagine. All right.
So yeah, print and cut adjustment. So one of the nice features of this being a printer and a cutter is, of course, the fact that you can print graphics and then go back and cut them. This is a reasonably simple alignment tool to make sure that when you're cutting, you get the absolute, best accuracy in terms of where he's cutting in terms of the graphics, so you don't end up with any white edges or it cutting halfway through a graphic. Again, it's quite difficult to sort of explain it. Much easier when you see it, but what it does effectively, this will print a black square and then go and cut that black square. And depending on where the alignment is, if it cuts in the correct place, then brilliant. If it needs to moving around, then we've got the options on the left-hand side of the BN-20 utility to adjust that. And it becomes a case of just, again, maybe 2 or 3 tests until you're absolutely happy with it. And then you know that when you come to do your printing and cutting, the graphics will all be nice and in the right place. There's an extension to the, so we can close that one. There's an extension to that because, again, one of the features of this machine, as well as many of our others, is they have the ability to print, then as a separate process cut the graphics afterwards. Useful if, for argument's sake, you're laminating or a particular material and it is going to need some additional drying time. We can print with some marks on it, but the BN-20 then later on will go and read those marks and know to cut in the right place. So this adjustment, this crop cut adjustment is again, it's exactly the same, black box and a square, and it will cut, and you adjust the cut box to make sure it matches the print box. But this one is for if you're printing, then laminating, or printing, taking the material off and coming back at a later date to cut it. So that's the adjustment screens. Yeah, manual cleaning.
Oh, I clicked it now.
Yeah. So manual cleaning. Now there is some user maintenance.
We'll go through the other options in the utility, then we'll come back to the manual cleaning, and Matt can go through the whole process, I guess. But as part of the manual clean, there's 3 options in the replace tools bit. Click on these. Again, we click on these, it's going to try and get us to do them, but if you want to talk through, well, maybe we'll go through, if you're going to do any of these parts in your manual maintenance, if you're going to replace the wiper or the felt within the machine, then you just click on the option here in the utility, and then it will go through the process. But maybe when we have a look at the manual clean, Matt can talk about how and why you would do those. And then there's 3 final options on the option tab on the far right side, which by and large, you're not going to. No,
you shouldn't need to normally use them. I mean, again, the user manual will talk you through each of these steps and what they're there for. But just very briefly, the pump ink will effectively empty the machine of all the ink that's inside the machine. The only reason you'd ever need to do either the pump ink or the head wash would be if you were going to be moving the machine or not using it for an extended period of time. So if you were just going to move the machine from your house here up the road to a factory, the pump ink will empty it out, and as long as it's not left without power for an extended period of time, there wouldn't be any problem with doing that. If you are going to leave the machine for an extended period of time without power, then the second option, the head wash, is more appropriate. That will empty the machine of all the ink, but then it allows you to run cleaning fluid through the lines and through the head, and then the machine can be left powered off or in storage for a longer period of time. And factory reset pretty much does what it says on the tin. It will start everything or reset all the values in the machine back to 0 and ask you to set it all up again.
So try not to accidentally decide to do one of the top 2 options with the pump ink or the head wash. But as I said, with those kind of options as well, normally that would you probably would have been recommended that, or if you are going to be moving the machine, or I know you are going to be putting it into storage or shipping it or whatever it might be, it's probably best to call your local Roland offices and speak to them and find out, what's going to be the best option. Is there anything else you need to do? How do you go about this? Because, yeah, those are kind of quite extreme things to be doing. Well, not extreme, but they're the higher end of what we'll be doing with the machine. As you said, like Matt and I grabbed this machine from the Creative Centre next door and brought it in here this afternoon. Moving your machine like that, you're not going to need to take the inks out. It can be moved normally, but it's just for a bit more extended stuff. And that's another key point there that Matt said, if you're going to be turning it off for any extended period of time, then you need to do one of these things. You do need to take the ink out of the lines, and so that the print head's not going to dry up as well. So key point there is don't power off your machine. All of the Roland devices should be powered on at the back on the main switch all the time, because they do their own cleaning procedures and they need to sort of keep the print heads primed. So don't turn off your machine for any extended period of time without prior knowledge of what you're going to be doing.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it for the adjustments in the utility. But a couple of things, I guess. One thing about the utility is if your machine's beeping at you a lot, you don't know why, because it doesn't have a menu panel to say so. So if it beeps at you, you need to open the utility to find out why. And then the utility will have a little dialog box saying what it is that's missing. Maybe it's the switch on one side, or it's out of ink, or whatever it might be. So listen to your utility if it tells you something along those lines. I'm sure if you've got a BN-20, you might have heard some beeping before.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to talk through the manual cleaning now, Matt.
Yeah. Okay. So obviously, Joe was saying that the machines themselves they do have inbuilt cleaning routines. So you'll hear the machine if it's powered off at the front, which is fine to power it off at. It's just at the back we can't power it off. But if it's powered off at the front, you will hear it wake up periodically and do a very short cleaning routine. For the most part, the machine will look after itself. It does need sort of, and we recommend weekly, but a weekly intervention by the user. It's a very, very straightforward 2-minute job, but in doing the manual cleaning, it does absolutely keep the machine in the best possible condition, extending the life of all the components and therefore ultimately saving you lots of money in the long run. So once a week, Friday afternoon, Monday morning, whichever you prefer. I'll just grab some bits. Biggest bag of gloves in the world. But yeah, in your original kit, you end up with a bottle of cleaning fluid, some swabs, and some disposable gloves. If we start the procedure, you press the manual cleaning button on the BN-20 utility, and the first thing it's done is come up saying remove the sheet. So the loading lever at the back, lift that up, the pinch wheels have loaded, and now we can remove the sheet from the machine. On the screen, you might not be able to see this, but on the screen, BN-20 utility at the moment is saying still remove the sheet, so we'll press OK on that. Press the button again, and now things start happening on the printer. What it's done, if you could see that, was it's moved the print carriage to the left-hand side of the machine where we have this maintenance cover available. Are we able to share that as well?
Yeah, we can jump across there.
One of the nice things with the BN-20 utility is that everything that the dialog boxes, they are good on the screen, and they show you exactly each stage and each step that you need to do. So it's now saying remove the left-hand maintenance cover, undo this thumb screw down at the bottom.
So yeah, that's the nice thing of having the utility over a menu panel, is it does talk you through everything within here that you need to do. It's quite handy. So the moment it says wait for the head to stop moving, then remove the maintenance cover. After you remove the cover, click next. So it's going to talk us through in stages what we need to do. It also says that you should finish your cleaning procedure within 30 minutes. It takes 5 minutes, so there's no worries there. But just don't leave the machine and go out for the afternoon with the printhead out, because it's a wet part of the machine that's come out.
So
Matt's just getting dressed up for his cleaning. So if you're cleaning any of your machines, if you're using if you're using any of our cleaning solutions, or if you're going near the inks or something like that, you need to wear your safety kit. So Matt's got all his gear, he's got his gloves on,
some goggles,
safety swabs, and I've seen that Nikki's just popped up with a comment there saying, "Don't forget a torch."
Absolutely.
Very, very wise.
Yeah.
So normally we tend to use our phones, but just because it's something that's always handy with you. But yeah, always good to use a torch, especially in this small compartment, because it can be quite tricky to get towards the back there.
So, what we're ready to do now.
Let's jump over back, so we're sharing the main screen a minute, so the camera's a little bit bigger there.
So if we click on the, where we're up to on
Click on next.
Click on next to remove the cover. And now again, what it's now showing us is the area of the print head. I'll try and speak up a bit because I'll be facing away from the microphone, but what it's effectively asking us to do is dip the swab in some cleaning solution and run around the outside of the print head area. It's quite important to avoid touching the actual surface of the print head, because the print head is a precision, delicate part of the machine, so we avoid touching the actual surface of the head. But what we need to do is clean around the edges of the print head. And the reason being is that if people have seen these machines before or seen how they work, at the far right hand end, where the machine rests the print head when not in use, and to do the cleaning, there's a rubber seal. And when the head's at rest, the rubber seal needs to create a perfectly nice airtight seal to make sure that the heads don't dry out, but also to enable the cleaning to take place. So the idea is we're just cleaning around the edge of the head, so that if there's any build-up of dried ink or debris from material, that they can create that nice airtight seal around the head. Secondly, especially on, say, some garment films or certain materials, you can end up with some fluff or dust stuck around the underside of the head. And with that, you start to see some telltale signs of something dragging along the material. There is one part of the head, the sort of back right hand area, which is quite difficult to get to with the swab, but with perseverance and a torch, you can keep it all nice and clean.
Let's have a look at Matt doing.
There we go.
I'm just using my phone as a torch, but obviously you might want to use a proper torch.
We clean around the edge of the print head. As I say, if we're doing this regularly, the nice thing is that it only takes a couple of minutes each week.
Sometimes I find something quite useful when you are trying to get to that back right hand corner, because it's the furthest corner and it's obviously sort of butt up against the actual platen here. Sometimes it's a bit easier to either cut these in half or maybe bend them so that you can get right in there and up to that back corner. And you do want to go all the way around the back corner that you see there.
So a couple of minutes, just giving a nice clean around the back of the print, around the sides of the print head, and the other area we need to clean. And again, it's not going to be possible to view it on the camera, I don't think, but we should be able to see it on the utility. Which again on the screen at the moment you can see it, showing just the area that we've just cleaned. The next area is the cap itself. So at the right hand end, I was saying we've got the rubber seal where the capping station is, and the print head rests above that, in a similar way to making sure there's no build up of ink and fluff and debris around the actual head itself. We're then using the swab and the cleaning fluid just to wipe around the cap area itself. Make sure that there's no ink build up, dried ink around that, and you're good to go. Again, a couple of minutes, and it's very, very straightforward indeed.
And that mentions there as well about the white blade.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. So the other thing in there, on the left hand side of the cap itself, you have two. So what you have is this is taken off of a slightly different machine. But what you can see with it is there's a wiper blade in the machine, and there's a cleaning belt in the machine. So these are consumable parts, and periodically your BN-20 utility will get you to, or will pop up a message saying to replace them. As part of your manual cleaning, what you also do need to do is try and get it as close to the camera as I can. But there's a wiper blade, which is that. The wiper blade is the only part of the machine that comes into contact with the printhead itself. So when it's doing its cleaning, it ends up with ink on the surface of the head. It runs the printhead over the rubber wiper blade, and that takes the excess ink away. And then the felt just dabs the sides of the head to remove that excess ink that's been moved by the wiper, if that makes any sense. So as a result, these bits do come into contact with ink, and as part of your cleaning, you just want to rub a swab around them, make sure they're nice and clean, and away you go. As I say, these are user replaceable parts. The BN-20 utility does come up periodically and say time to replace wiper, time to replace felt, so make sure you've got some on the shelf. But the cost of these, you know, and when you think about what they're protecting in the printhead itself, it's well worth staying on top of the maintenance of the wiper and the felt.
Yeah, when you go into your manual clean by, normally you'll see the wiper blade on this side next to the capping station. You won't see the felt unless you go into the menu, into the utility, sorry, and say replace felt. Then you can see that they're kind of on two little arms like this, and the other one will sort of switch up, and then you'll see the felt. The felt you don't actually normally clean, you just need to replace it periodically. So, but the wiper you can clean and clean until it's sort of had enough, and then you'll need to replace it.
As another little tip for you, the wiper blades have got, I don't know if you can try and show, but the wiper blade, I don't think it will show on there, but the wiper blade has actually got a shape to it. It's got a lid that comes off. It's quite important to make sure that it's orientated in the right direction. Again, we've seen in the field occasionally, you know, the wiper blades being put in the wrong way round, and whilst it doesn't affect the printer or cause any damage, what you will find is that it doesn't take the ink away probably from the underside of the head, and therefore it leaves a residue on the head, and that ink has to go somewhere, and inevitably it ends up on your print when you're printing. So yeah, just be mindful of the sort of direction it faces in.
I think the curved edge faces the movement of the printhead as it comes out. So you want your curved edge where the printhead's going to come out. Hopefully that makes sense. It was a bit tricky trying to show you on the webcam there. And so in the utility now, it says clean the frame around the head cap, clean the wiper, and then it says be sure to remove all the dust, as we've mentioned, and then click on the next button. And it just says attach the maintenance cover and then close the front cover and click done. That was it. So as we mentioned, the procedure doesn't take very long. If you do it regularly, it takes even less time, obviously, but it's less than 5 minutes. It is good to use a torch just to check that you're getting all the way around, especially with bits of hair or fibrous dust. It's very hard to see those unless you shine a torch on them. They're really small hairs, and you often won't see them. So there's the maintenance cover there. Our switch has got a little bit of a. There we go. So you can hear the noise. It's just bringing the printhead back over to the other side so that it can. When you've done a clean, the machine will always do an additional clean, and it's just going to clean itself up and make sure that the station's working okay, etc. And then we can drop the station. But yeah, I think that's more or less it for the manual clean. Yeah. I mean, other parts that you can get a damp cloth and just wipe down any of the surfaces of the machine. If you do get ink anywhere else on the machine, if you use isopropanol, just pure alcohol to clean any of the parts that have got paint or anything on them, any of the metal parts or the sort of the parts around the print area, you can use the cleaning solution on those as well. Otherwise, just try to keep your machine clean. Obviously, dust and things will get picked up by the printhead as it moves at times. So if you're in a cleaner environment, you're going to get less of that happening. Also, when you print and there's dust on your material, what you get is kind of like, it looks almost like a spot. It's kind of, you'll get a little bit of fiber, and as the ink goes down, that will absorb the ink. So you get this kind of bit of negative space around it where it's sucked up the ink with a little dot in the middle. So if you ever see that happening, that's normally because of dust on your material, or you're in your environment. So it's just coming down and settling on the media as you're printing. Yeah.
Very often it's commonly people tend to refer to it as they call it fish eye, and it literally, that dust effect does look like that. It looks like a fish eye, where there's a blank space on the material, and yeah, a solid or darker dot in the middle, just where the ink has gone over the dust. So yeah, always keep the environment as clean as possible as well, certainly for the materials.
All right, so I think there's a couple of questions have popped up there. I just mentioned at the beginning, I'm not sure if any of you missed that, but if you do have any questions and you type them into the chat box there, if you could put a question mark at the end, just because when we come to the end, we can pop anything with a question mark into a separate window, which will open up on the screen. But we'll just take a quick look there. So one comment, yeah, don't forget a torch. That's, as I said, it's really useful, especially as you're trying to get underneath into that panel. And maybe you can even get some slightly smaller ones of the cleaning swabs. But with those cleaning swabs, do make sure that you use the proper lint-free sponge cleaning swabs, not just any old rag, okay? Because you're going to get bits of fibre that will come off of that and affect your print as well. So somebody just said there, Helen, thanks, that's a helpful tip. Wasn't aware there was a right or wrong way around to put the wiper. Yeah. And the felt there isn't. No, the felt is it's the same. It's a flat shape, so it can go either way round. And again, the other thing which is invaluable with these machines is a decent pair of tweezers. Again, you probably can't see it on the screen, but the way the felt and the wiper go in is that they've got a couple of holes in the bottom of them, and so having said, a nice pair of tweezers, and I haven't got any hands. One thing we didn't bring with us. But what you've got, and again, I apologise if you can't see this, but the wiper and the felt, they go into the slot and the holder, and they hook. There's a couple of tabs, and they hook up underneath it. If I remove that, you may be able to see the wiper, and probably be able to see the shape of it a lot better, maybe. But yeah, so there's a couple of tabs that pop in. So when it comes to removing them, unhook them from the hooks, lift them out, give the holder a nice clean with the cleaning fluid and the swabs again, and then put the new one back in, push it all the way down, and then just make sure that it hooks underneath the tabs. So it can't. The only other comment I've had with the felt is it does have two very small sort of slits in the top of it, so that the middle part flaps. And I've had people complain before that theirs was broken because it had the little cuts. They are meant to be there, okay, just so the middle of the felt can move a little bit. There. Yeah, there's just on the edges. There's some. So you can see the felt will build up with ink over time, and that's why you just replace it rather than cleaning it. Another couple of bits on there. I haven't changed yours yet, as the machine is quite new on the wipers. That's fine. If you clean them regularly, they will last a bit longer as well, and you can kind of see. It's a visual thing. Obviously, if it looks caked in old bits of ink, or it's got dust and fluff on it, that is the bit that wipes your printhead. Replace it. But if it looks fine, then you don't need to replace it all the time. How can you clean the media clamps without bending them? Well, yeah, how do you clean the media clamps? I mean, cleaning the top of the media clamps is nice and straightforward. Obviously, you can use for that a swab and even some of the cleaning fluid to move any of the excess ink off. The underside of the media clamp shouldn't, and I say shouldn't, they shouldn't pick up ink if the material has been loaded correctly, because they're designed to sit on the outside of the pinch wheels. If they do build up some ink, then yeah, just very, very gently is the honest answer. You can clean underneath them. You obviously don't want to lift them right up and bend them into shape, but just a very sort of gentle lift on them won't distort them to the point where they damage. Hopefully that answers the question. Because they're hinged at the back, obviously you can get a small bit of lift at the front, which means you'll be able to get under there. But obviously, if there's lots of stuff at the back, maybe you want to get some thinner sponge, to be able to get under there. Lint-free cloth, or say an isopropyl alcohol wipe, you could put underneath that and just move it from side to side. That would likely clear any of the excess ink or dust on there. My wipers sometimes stay up vertical. Is there a way to reset it? Right, okay, so the wiper mechanism, very similar to this one, operates on a motor assembly and turns around. There's various switches and sensors to work out the position that it's sat in.
it would normally, or the machine would normally check the sensor position of the wiper at the point at which you switch the machine on and off again. If you're finding that over time, a couple of things could be happening. But if you're finding over time, or you're finding that the wiper is getting stuck in a certain position, then one or two things is either happening. You can get a build-up of ink around the mechanism that the wiper turns on. So the machine is trying to turn the wiper, but the dried ink and caked on ink is preventing the movement. The easiest way of resolving it, if that's the cause, is spend some extra time in there with your torch and your swabs and your cleaning, and just go around the wiper mechanism and the wiper area and make sure it's all nice and clean. The alternative, which is less likely, I guess, but maybe there's some ink in one of the sensors. You can see the sensor, and with a swab, and I wouldn't recommend a cleaning fluid for cleaning any of the sensors on the machine, but a cleaning swab and some isopropyl alcohol is good for this sort of stuff. Just clean the sensor and make sure that it's that it's detecting in the right place and stuff. And obviously, if you carry on having issues after that, best advice would be to contact your tech support team of your local Roland office, and they'll either be happy to help over the phone or potentially, if needed, arrange an engineer to come and visit.
All right. Next bit on there. Can the media slides be replaced? Mine snagged and bent. Managed to get it down, but think the blade may be slightly snagged. Yeah,
okay. So the media clamps on these, for those that already have the machine, they're built in and attached to the media wheels. They're designed to hold the edge of the material flat so that it doesn't lift and the heads don't catch the material as they come across. It's one of the common issues that I've listed down earlier, and it is something we do see, which is the media clamps. If you have a head crash or if the media is not quite loaded correctly, they do lift up, or they do bend, or they do buckle. Technically, it depends on where you're located, obviously, but I mean, here in the UK, we visit customer sites to replace them as needed, because they have the sort of ruling is if it needs a screwdriver, we tend to send an engineer out. Yes, they can be replaced, and it's not a particularly difficult job for anyone who's reasonably capable. There's a couple of screws around the back, and they'll come out, and away they go. What you can do, and it's a bit of a top tip, but you won't be able to see it on here, but I often recommend to people, especially if you're always loading the same width of material, pop a bit of masking tape on the front of the media clamp, and it just keeps it flat and down. What you don't want to do is put the masking tape over the area where the media is going to feed through, but off to one side, and just a little bit of tape holding the clamp down at the front, will both allow you to use a media clamp if it has been slightly bent, and alternatively, if it hasn't been bent, it should stop it from bending in the first place.
And as with the media clamps, obviously stuff can happen, as they say, but just try and be careful when you're pulling through your material that you're not going to jam something and try and bend them up. But and that's a nice tip. So obviously when the media clamp sat half on and half off the material, on the media clamp that's half off, that's where you could put your bit of masking tape or something just to hold that bit down, perhaps. Would this be okay for hobby use, or does it have to be on all the time? Can definitely be used for hobby use. They do need to be switched on at the back, but they use minimal power consumption when they're switched on. It's just so that they can wake up and do their little cleaning routines. So it doesn't have to. It does need to be switched on, but it doesn't need to be printing all the time. Printers do like to print. As with anything that's sort of a technical device, normally they like to be turned on. Anything with a battery likes to be turned on so that it can use the battery, otherwise the battery will run down. Same with printers, they like to print. You can, however, ours sometimes sits in our showroom, might not print for a week or so. But I think if I had one myself and I had a small business, you'd probably want to print something on it at least maybe once a week. I'd say just to, if I did, I'd just print a small strip of ink just so that it's done something good.
No, you don't have to. I mean, again, the machine is doing its own cleaning.
effectively just keeping the ink moving around and stopping it from drying within the machine or anywhere that you don't want it to dry. If you're not using it weekly, like Joe said, it's always worth doing just a nozzle check or a very small print of something, just to make sure that everything is firing and working properly. Certainly as well, I'd still carry on doing your manual cleaning each week. See if you know, as part of the usage it does, or as part of the cleaning, it does use some of the ink. Your local dealer should be able to give you, you know, actual numbers and figures of what it uses in terms of cleaning. It will be hopefully a lot less than you imagine in terms of ink. It uses a bit, but not a lot. So yeah, it can be absolutely used as a hobby machine. And yeah, come and go to it as you like. Hopefully, of course, you find suddenly, whilst it's for a hobby, you know, you start, friends and family start asking for bits and pieces, and it suddenly becomes a much more of a production machine for you.
Yeah, hopefully that answers your question there. Debbie, most of my printing is a print lamination, print lamination, then cut. I assume that's meant to say workflow. I do print a lot of small 5 centimeter by 8 centimeter stickers, but I have a problem with the crop cut aligning exactly so that I can get a perfect cut. There is enough margin of error where I may need to redo the print. I feel I am within 5-degree allowance. Any tips here?
Okay.
Yes.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I don't know. Hopefully, Debbie, you were with us earlier when we showed the print and cut alignment and the crop cut alignment. For yourself, the crop cut alignment, if you're doing print, then laminate, then cut, is the area particularly to use. The other thing that springs to mind here is it depends on. It doesn't say that the sort of total length of job that you're trying to do. I'm going to lead you on to a nice bit of VersaWorks here. But one of the, you know, doing smaller batches is always much more effective because it will re-register after each batch. Now that doesn't mean you have to set the one job up and then just keep sending it over and over again, although that is an option for you. But there are also other features in VersaWorks. There's a custom cut feature which allows you to take a job with multiple images or multiples of the graphic. Try and work out what I'm trying to say, and get VersaWorks to split it into smaller areas, printing the crop marks after each smaller section.
We'll show you that in a second. It'll make a bit more sense. But yeah, the idea that I guess there's a few things with print, laminate, and cut. Crop cut's great. Custom cut, as we were just discussing, basically batching your jobs into. So it could be one long job with say 100 jobs, but you break it down so that it prints and cuts 10, then prints and cuts 10, then prints and cuts 10, but keeps going. That's a way of it keeping its accuracy across distance. The other thing that you might be having if you're doing print lamination and cut, and you're finding that the cut goes out, it could be down to your laminating stage. So it could be that when you're laminating, maybe you're putting a little bit too much pressure down and it's distorting the material. It could be that there's a little bit too much heat going down and that might be distorting the material, which can be either down to the laminate, the material, and obviously the pressure and the heat of your laminator. So those are a couple of things that can sort of change what's happening with your material. So it reads the marks, but but there's had a distortion in the middle. So when it sends the cut might be accurate, but the print might not be, or the print and cut might not be. That can happen. It could be that again that all inks and all materials will move over time. It's inevitable with any ink and any material that there'll be a small bit of movement, either with sort of the adhesive moving or the ink sort of drying or whatever it might be. So it could be that depending on how your process is working, your print, laminate and cut, that there might be a little bit of movement going on between those processes, I guess.
I was just going to say as well, as a sort of good tip if you can, and of course it will depend on whether your artwork will allow it or not, but it's also worth occasionally introducing some bleed into the artwork, so extending the colour of the artwork. Someone's just pointed out on there for us as well. Thanks. Actually extending the colour of the artwork so that it's always cutting through the colour. Depends on the artwork and what you're trying to cut. And one other thing as well is just be mindful of, and this may not be relevant for what you're doing, but do be mindful of temperature changes or ambient temperature changes between the printing and the cutting. So if you print in the middle of the day when it's really warm, and then you're trying to do the cut in the middle of the night when it's freezing cold, you may find that there's some differences in the accuracy as a result. It's always best to try and maintain a sort of stable environment for the machine in general certainly for doing lots of different processes.
Hopefully that answers some of your questions there, Mario. Here's one from Simon. There's a connector on the back of the print head that reads media width. Sometimes mine becomes unplugged. Is there a way to access this so I can reconnect it? As it takes some time to do, as you can not see the plug or the connector. Sounds quite something a little bit more advanced there, Simon. Well, let Matt take it.
Yeah, it's so I know the connector you're referring to, and it's the one that measures the media width. It is placed, or it is designed to be sat on the back of the print head. It's not the easiest connector to get to. There's no way of dressing it up particularly, but you can. If it does come unplugged, again, I mean, in the UK, we would generally go and rectify that for the customer. You can sometimes get to it from the maintenance bay with a mirror and a torch, but yeah, there's unfortunately, Simon, there's no 2-minute answer to that one. It is a sort of service part of the machine, and yeah, you do have to do stuff to get to it to plug it back in. Again, a lot of the time, or the only times we necessarily see it coming unplugged, however, are as a result of catching media. So the sensor will knock against the media that's lifted up. Therefore, I'm not saying always, but if the media is loaded correctly, hopefully the incidences of it catching that sensor should be absolutely few and far between.
Yeah. Well, personally, I'd never go near it. That's because I know how to run the things very well. I just let these guys cover those kind of things. So another little comment there from Lee. I have trouble lining up my print job after lamination for cutting. The machine doesn't seem to recognise the process. Registration marks. Any tips here?
Yeah, it depends. Again, most of the time, or a lot of the time, we find that the laminate and the lighting that the machine is in, especially different laminates, make it much harder for the machine, or can make it much harder for the machine to read the crop mark, particularly if it's a textured laminate or like a crystal laminate or something. It can make it quite difficult for the sensor to see the mark. What you can do is a very, very easy fix is to, with a scalpel, just cut the laminate around the crop mark and peel that back and leave the crop mark exposed underneath the laminate.
As you can see here, we've got a light above us over here, and sometimes the light can come straight down off the laminate and into the sensor. So the sensor actually sits just sort of behind the cutting blade, kind of on that carriage. There's a little sensor, and if the light goes right into the sensor, it won't register the black of the crop mark as well. And so it might even be worth just checking that that's clean. So when it comes over, you can
a swab with some, again, for any of the optical sensors or anything. Avoid using the Roland solvent fluid, but use a swab either with some either dry and just cleaning any dust off. Alternatively, isopropyl alcohol again is very useful for that, and available very easily on the high street.
Yeah, so it could have just been that that's got a little bit dusty. And the other thing is just when you're lining it up, if you line up the crop marks and the little line, they should line up directly above your cutting strip. That's kind of where the sensor sits. So rather than having them too far forward or too far back, if you're lining them up directly with the cutting strip, they've got the most likely chance of being recognised. And then sometimes you want to try and measure the distance from where the crop marks are to something straight. So either the cutting strip, or sometimes the line on the front of the machine, or the shadow from the light, or something you should be able to check so that you can see how wonky you put it in, I guess. With the weekly manual clean, should I be going at it until the swabs remain clean, or just a quick wipe?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be until the swabs get absolutely clean. Otherwise, you'll use a lot of swabs, and there's always ink around there. And at each stage as well, as soon as you clean an area of the machine and press the next button, it will move the head back, and more ink is introduced to it. So no, absolutely, a nice just a quick wipe, avoiding any build-up of ink. The other thing is that while certain areas will remain dirty, the fluid is actually working to prevent ink drying or break down any of the drying ink. So no, I admire your attention to detail for it, but no, you don't need to keep going until the swabs are absolutely clean.
There you go. The cut can be off even on the first row. Oh, so that was backside from Mario talking about the printing cut. It could be that there's the printing cut arm out of alignment. It could be that your cutting strips out. It might be a technical visit if there's nothing else fixing it within the utility or anything you're doing in the machine. It could be your material. Without seeing it, I think it's really hard for us to say. But it could be that an engineer.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, Mario, we're not sure where you're located, but definitely the next, if you are having trouble with it, give your local Roland office a call, speak to their tech support team, and I'm sure they'll be more than happy to sort of work with you on the specific material and settings you've got, to see if there's something that they can do with you over the phone.
You said that, even with adding a 2mm bleed, you can't go any further with these designs. I don't know, 2mm bleed and
0.2 mil.
0.2 mil.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, it's a 2mm bleed. Add more bleed. There's no. Well, I assume there's probably, unless they need to be very accurate stickers, there's probably not much need. No reason not to. However, if it is not cutting very well, I mean, 0.2 is pretty minimal. But if it's out, then you can try the printer cut adjustment, try the crop cut adjustment again. Make sure that you're doing those at the same time, temperature as when you've been doing the cut. Make sure that you're not adding too much pressure to the laminate. There's a number of things you can try and do to help. But again, without being there to see it, those are the main reasons and the main tips, I guess. But it could be, if you try it on 3 different materials, does it do it across all 3 materials? That would be another thing to try, because it could be that the material that you're using shrinks. I'm not sure if you can all see me again here. Are we back on live? Hello. Sorry, I think we might have just disappeared then. Okay, thank you.
Do you want to give the reason why, Joe?
Yeah. The screen just went blank. Technical difficulty. My laptop might have gone to sleep. So apologies there. Quickly ran and got a plug there, so we should be all right. Hopefully we didn't miss too much there. I saw the video. Brilliant. Okay. That's pretty funny. I thought everything had died for a minute then. Well, anyway, we're back. Yeah. So I don't know where we were. We were talking about, maybe trying your print and cut issue that you're having across different materials, but it could just be that something to do with the material. So if it does it on a higher grade material, so go for a high-end polymeric material with the matching laminate, and if it still does it, then it might be something to do with your machine.
And the only other thing is try experimenting with the cut speeds as well. Different materials, moving at different speeds will potentially, depending on the backing materials and stuff, they can slip around a bit. By slowing the actual speed the machine is feeding the material through, sometimes it can alleviate some of that slippage. Which
reminds me that it could be your grit roller.
Yeah, absolutely. So where you have or the pinch wheels itself, if the material is moving. The pinch wheels are rubber. Again, if it's a slightly older machine, or if you've used different materials which have made the rubber wheels dirty, again, it's a swab with some rubbing alcohol, clean those and make sure that they're nice and clean. There's no adhesive or anything on the actual rollers themselves. And where they clamp down to on the material, underneath the material, there's a grit roller, which is a metal. The metal roller, which is actually feeding the material through. Give that a clean with not quite something as aggressive as a wire brush, but even a scouring pad or something for that you use for the dishes, and just make sure that there's no paper dust or debris holding those, and therefore in the grit roller, which is causing the material to slip around.
Might be able to use an old toothbrush.
Yeah, old toothbrush or
something with bristles, just to make sure that the little rough surface that bites into the backing of the material has a rough surface. If that's been worn and it's slipping, that's where you could get misalignment. So hopefully that helps some of your issues there, Mario. Where are we at? So if you add bleed to the design, I get edge curl. Is there any way you can eliminate that? Edge curl is going to be
Well, yeah.
Either down to the material, again, if you use cheaper materials, they're going to be more likely to curl. It's down to the properties of the material. I say cheaper as in cheaper made or lower end. So if you're using a low end monomeric vinyl, it's going to be more likely to curl at the edges with the ink. If you use a higher grade material, it's going to have a better adhesive, it's going to have better elastic properties, it's not going to curl as much. In theory, you're not supposed to cut where you print. In theory, but that's pretty much irrelevant because everybody does. And sometimes if you print at a dry time before cut, that can help, just so the ink sort of settles and then you send the cut. But it's normally down to the materials or the amount of ink that you're putting.
I was going to say also making sure you use the correct profile for a material if it's available can help, as it prevents the oversaturation of ink on the material. Stops the material becoming very wet, and then when you cut it, it's sort of lost its tactile strength.
Hopefully that answers your question up there. Where were we? Sorry, we're just looking at the chat box here, trying to see where we are. That's cool. I'll find the way. If you need to cut into the ink, leave it to dry longer between print and cut. There we go. And don't weed the media straight away. Usually helps. Good tips, Nikki. Can the print speed be increased? I find 1 meter per hour is too slow. Is there something I can adjust? Depends on the material. So different profiles will have slightly different print speeds. And profiles are written so that the material can take the right amount of ink at the right speed to give you the best results, pretty much. So say, for example, you're printing onto a vinyl, okay, a self-adhesive vinyl. What happens is the pores of the material sort of soften a little bit. The ink comes down and settles into that. The solvent in the ink bites, which gives it that nice bond, which makes it outdoor durable. So all of your prints onto vinyl can go outside in the rain and whatever else. And then as they come out the front, the solvents sort of escape and you get this nice bond. If you put too much ink, you'll get sort of a pooling, which means you're oversaturating the material. And if you don't put enough, you're not going to get a good enough bite. So if you use the correct profile, it means you're going to get the best result for your print. But it also means that the speed at which that material can accept the ink has a limitation often. We have machines that can print 100 square meters an hour, but you can't print vinyl that fast because vinyl can't take ink that quickly. So yes, you can adjust the speed to be the quickest setting, but you're going to sacrifice the result. You might not get the best result in terms of how much ink was going down. You might not get the right color depth. It might not be the best quality print that you're looking for. Most of the time, the quality or the speed is down to how many passes the printhead has to do back and forth across the machine. And the amount of passes you have, the more passes, the better resolution and the better print you get. So, yes, you can print faster, but you're going to be sacrificing down the line. I guess if you want to print faster than 1 square meter an hour, time to upgrade your roll into the next one and get yourself a bigger, quicker machine. But often what happens with people with the BN-20 is it's a great machine for getting started. It's great if you're not in too much of a hurry to get your work out all day long. You can leave it overnight to keep printing, but if you do want to start, increasing the speed but keeping the quality, then you might need to look to a bigger, quicker device. Where are we? I found with print land cut, make sure you don't center the print.
Yeah, that's a good tip. Really that one.
Point.
Yeah.
Because it remembers its position for the crop. So if you've then laminated and maybe you've trimmed down the artwork, you actually change the size of the material, and you don't want it to re-center itself. So that can help as well. As Simon says, it won't read if it's being centered. And then, yeah, you guys just saying thanks for bearing with us whilst we had a small technical glitch. Doing things live on the internet always tends to do this. How do I find the correct profile when most materials state to use generic vinyl? A lot of materials, if a manufacturer is stating to use a generic, it probably means that they don't have a profile for that material. So the generic profiles are really good. So there's kind of 3 levels of profiles, okay? The generics are great, as long as you use them for the type of material that you're talking about. You use generic vinyl and you're printing on most vinyls, it will be pretty good. Obviously, within vinyl, there's such a spread. You can have super low end, very cheap monomeric vinyls. You can have very high end cast vinyls. But generic vinyl will do okay for the bunch. But if you're going at either end, you probably want to look at a profile more suited to it. The next level up is to use a media-specific vinyl, which means you're using one that's been built and dedicated for that specific material. And the highest end output is to write the profiles yourself on your machine in your situation, in your sort of environment. But most of the time, the generics are fine. And if you go onto Roland Media Center with the spelling C-E-N-T-R-E, so the American spelling of center, Roland Profile Center, sorry, RolandProfileCenter.com. You can then choose your region and you can find profiles to download. If you've got an older machine, so yes, the BN-20 with EcoSolmax links, you can also find them on the RolandDG.com website underneath the download section. There's a lot of our sort of older profiles in there as well. But if you speak to suppliers, you should be able to get pretty good profiles for your material. The generics are normally pretty good, but make sure you do choose the best one suited for your material. If you choose some of the sort of, for instance, some of you guys I can see have joined us from the States. If you're on the DGA website, or if you go to the States in the Roland Profile Center to get your profiles, they'll have a lot of sort of generic formulation profiles for the materials that they sell in the States as well. And you can kind of use those as a generic. So say, for example, I don't have a generic canvas profile, but I do want to print onto canvas. A canvas profile will be better than using a generic vinyl profile, for example. So try and get the best match for the material that you're using, would be my advice. Yeah, I found that some don't have profiles available. Roland but there is on Roland's profile site. Yeah, not all manufacturers have profiles. In order to create profiles, it's quite a lengthy process at times. And if you imagine that even for the BN-20, we've got 3 ink configurations. So that's effectively 3 different machines. You've got 3 different speeds, you know, your draft or your high quality, for example. Each of the profiles have got to be written for each of those, and then for all the different types of material. So there can be a lot of work, and so therefore you're not always going to be able to find the perfect profile for your output, but the generics are normally good. Yeah. Can't graph doesn't have one, and I don't need my graphic one either. So I don't know those guys. I think that's over in the States. Using MetaMark, but for the BN-20, it says to use generic vinyl. The generics, as we said, getting the right profile is fine-tuning and making sure you've got the best output. The generics are there so that you can pretty much print on anything. But yeah, if people say that if media manufacturers are saying that the generic vinyl profile is good, then go with that, I'd say. Yeah, thanks for popping up the link there, Ollie. RolandProfileCenter.com. Sorry, C-E-N-T-E-R, not R-E. Does Roland have a Canadian site, or would I just use the American? It's DGA.
Yeah, the American one covers North Canada America as well, yeah.
As a whole, and maybe even sort of Mexico and Brazil, I think. Well, no, Brazil's got its own Roland DG Brazil. I think the rest of it is Roland DGA, the Roland DG Americas. UK does assume you are using EcoSolmax 3 inks though. Yes. So with the ink formulations, that's slightly different. The sort of legislation across the world, and yes, in Europe, it's sort of assumed that you're using Max 3, whereas if you go to the States, it might be the options for Max and Max 2. But you can go to the different profile center sites and still download profiles. Don't feel that you have to only use Europe or the UK or
not region specific, are they? It's a profile will work on any of them.
Yeah. Right, just going to jump back into this little presentation that we had. Just whilst we're talking about ways of getting help and things, I did sort of just touch on the fact that we've got the Roland Profile Center. We've got RolandDG.co.uk for the UK site. There's Roland sites for everybody around the world. On the Roland UK site, you can access all of our social media channels. You can access sort of link help files and download links and things. In fact, I might just jump onto the website and show you some of these bits if you like. That might help. Let's just open it up here a moment, and then I'll jump on. Just give me one moment. Wait for this to open up. Sorry, just 1 second whilst this loads. There bit slow. Sorry guys, bear with me a minute. Will be with you. As always, technology letting us down. Just give us a minute. So right, here we go. So hopefully now you should be able to see the Roland DG UK website. It looks the same as the other websites, okay, around the world. And at the top here, we've got the options for training. So if you are looking to join us on any academy courses or future webinars, for example. On the right-hand side here, we've got a split part that says support. And in there, we've got online resources down the bottom there. So if you are looking at sort of help files, we've got all of our maintenance videos and things in there, extended warranties, registering your Roland or logging a case if you do have technical issues and need to log those as well. All the different lists of all the different products and things. We've got the Roland forum as well, which is a great place for you guys to share information, research, look for stuff. There's all sorts inside the Roland forum. There's a link at the very top there. Hopefully you can see my mouse. If not, I'll just click on the forum and that'll open up as well. But the forum is a huge source of information. It's free to join, and there's lots of information on the BN-20 in there. If we have a look down the bottom, there's actually at the moment 25,500 posts on there and over 7,000 members. So there's lots and lots of information you can access via the forum. For those of you that can't see the link, it's rolandforum.co.uk. And the other thing I was just going to show you was, I think I was going to show you a video, was it? What were we looking at? Profiles. Down a minute. That was it. Sorry, yeah. So just some of the different help sections, and of course our YouTube channel. That was it. So if we go to Roland DG UK, are called Roland DG B. I guess for Britain maybe, can't remember. And Roland DGA both have YouTube channels. So there's lots of videos available on there. If you go to the YouTube channel and click on the videos, there's a whole section all about the BN-20 as well. So if we scroll down to the bottom here, you'll see that there's I think there's about 20 odd videos all about the BN-20. So if you haven't checked those out already, be sure to do so. It's all about your setup and how to use them. There's also help videos on VersaWorks, on, I think we did one on, replacing the cutting strip on the machine, for example, cleaning the machine, blade, everything in there. So worth checking those out and making sure that you're up to date on those. There's also other bits about design and things like that as well. And finally, a couple of bits about us, myself and Matt. So as I said, the Roland Academy, we've got more of these webinars coming up. There's more and more happening. They're all on the same place on our website where you can register. So rolanddg.co.uk, and then in the top right, the Academy, just drop down to where it says webinar. We also run courses as well, and there's all the videos and stuff online. Roland Care, the guys, we're actually downstairs in our offices at the moment, next door to the guys in Roland Care. They're on the phones, available all day, every day, and you can get your extended care packages through these guys. Obviously, Matt looks after the sort of field engineers, and then we've got all the guys on the phones next door as well. It's a big bonus having us guys here, I guess, for you. But that's kind of it from our little sort of presentation overview. We've talked about the maintenance, we've talked about some issues. It'd be good if we can just have a little bit more time for question and answers for you guys. So if you guys do have any questions, what we can do is if we can ping those up on the screen, and we can try and answer them for you. So feel free to ask away. If you need to see anything in VersaWorks as well, we can have a quick look in there if you need to, any design bits and bobs. Or if not, yeah, see if we can answer any of your questions. So let's have a quick look. Right. So, can I mix EcoSolmax 3 with EcoSolmax?
The simple answer to that is no. They are two very different ink types. You need to stick to one or the other. Both inks have got different properties, which sort of leads on to the next question there as well, which is asking about the different qualities of the EcoSol Max 3 ink, partly because it dries a lot quicker. Yes, the Max 3 ink was designed as a faster drying ink. So alongside drying faster on the material, it can also dry faster in areas of the machine, around the wiper blade, around the edges of the head and stuff like that. Particularly when, say, using one of the Max 3 ink in particular, your weekly maintenance becomes, absolutely critical to do because of that benefit of the faster ink drying. We have plenty of customers using the Max 3 ink without any problems whatsoever. But yeah, you just have to be particular about the maintenance and make sure it's done regularly and on time.
The only caveat to the mixing of the inks is the white ink and the metallic ink.
Good point.
So the CMYKs will be either EcoSol Max or EcoSol Max 3, but the Max, it's Max 2, I think, can't remember exactly. Check on our cartridge here. Yeah, sorry, the white and the metallic are still Max 2.
Max 2, yeah. And actually, because the machine is configured to read the cartridges, if you were to try and put the Max 3 cartridge into a Max machine or vice versa, you'll get a pop-up on the Windows utility to say that the ROM has been installed.
And that part about it drying a lot faster is, with inks, it's normally down to the impact. So when the ink that ink droplet first hits the material, that volatility when it first hits there and bonds, that's the bit that they're talking about it drying faster. So it doesn't necessarily mean that if I printed 2 prints and left them next to each other, one would be wet and one would be dry. It's more, or one would be cured faster. They still got the same amount of solvents in, so they will still need outgassing before laminating, but it's just that they will tend to sort of dry a little bit quicker around some parts inside the machine. So hopefully that answers some of your questions. Something from Ian, I find it really irritating the lack of material that is 500 millimeters ready to buy on the shelf. Why should the minimum option from most stockers start at 760? That has to be cut down. We manufacture machines, not material, unfortunately. So as we said, in order to have a machine that's this size, as you said, it's kind of the only one on the market really that's print and cut eco solvent at this size. We made it smaller so that it's more accessible to a lot more people, so that it can go in more environments, so that it can be in home networks and things like that. But it means that some of the standard sizes, 760, 1.3 or 1.6, for example, aren't going to obviously fit on the machine. Now, a lot of manufacturers will cut down material for you. So if you did get a 1/360 roll, you can get 2 500s and the leftover bit as well. And the material doesn't have to be 500. You can put in smaller amounts as well at certain points within the machine to see where the pinch wheels will go. Pinch wheels have to go above a grit roller. So the pinch wheel, where you see the long silver bar inside the machine, there's rough areas and there's smooth areas. The pinch wheel can't go above a smooth area. It has to go above a rough area. But yeah, it's down to having a machine there's not 40 different manufacturers of this machine. There's only one, so you are sometimes limited. But a lot of manufacturers will cut down the material for you. I buy a 1.5 log and get it cut into 3. There we go. Perfect. Can you get a self-adhesive paper for labels that will work on the BN-20? I'm sure you can, because you can get them for the bigger machines. You'll just have to get it cut down, I imagine. I don't know a manufacturer off the top of my head to say that to you, but I'm sure if you jump on the forum, maybe some people might have some answers for you. And likewise, if you just speak to a number of suppliers, if you Google different suppliers, or speak to your suppliers of your material or your dealer of your machine, they might be able to recommend something. But I have seen lots of self-adhesive papers. There's not as many as self-adhesive vinyls, but you do get them. So yeah, a little bit of digging, and hopefully you will be able to find those. Just a minute. Looking through that, popping up some more questions. Right, so where did we get to? When printing a vinyl for applying to textiles, is there a time you should wait before heat printing? Yes, there is. as with any of the inks, the ink needs to cure before you press it. Now, if you speak to just about anybody who does heat transfer for garment or for textiles, hardly anybody waits, you know, because they've got a guy waiting in the shop to pick up the t-shirt. So they get it out of the machine, they chuck it on the press, they press it and they give it to them. But then you're force curing the ink. So the ink needs to settle into the material. The solvent gases still would need to escape. And you want that ink to settle into the surface of the material. And then you should cure. Now, it will work and it will be fine if you do so, but the washability is probably not going to be as long as if you waited before you heat press. Depending on the material, depending on how heavy the ink or the print was, I'd say 4 hours as a rough guide, but I'd say anywhere from 2 for a very light print to 24 hours. So if I said 4 to 8 hours, 4 hours, I mean, if I was personally having a business and I was doing that, I'd just have a little caveat and I'd say to them, if you do want it straight away, there's a chance that it won't last as long because you need your ink to cure. That would be my little caveat if I was selling these.
And often the material manufacturers themselves will have specification sheets with guidelines and recommendations based on their own testing.
Yeah, and you know, pressing temperatures and times and all the rest of it as well. So I can test print on yeah. Perfect, yeah, getting the sheets cut down. Sorry, I've marked all of these as questions now, so they're popping up even if they're not questions. Any tips for getting the most out of the metallic ink? No issues with silvers, but say I want to do a nice metallic red, what's the proper setup for all for that? My color chart doesn't print very well, lots of pooling. With the metallic ink, it does look best on its own because it's a silver ink in effect. So if you've just got silver, it's going to be the most metallic. If you add red, obviously that might dull it down a tiny bit. There are different settings within the RIP as to how you print the metallics. You can just print the silver ink, return to origin, and then put CMYK on top of it. You can get the pre-mixed swatches that you would use in Illustrator or Corel, for example, and use those in your artwork, in which case it's going to print in one go. Or you can do I think it's the metallic then CMYK setting, in which case the printhead splits and it's kind of putting down metallic and then CMYK as it's going. Personally, I tend to find that option rather than using the mixed swatches tends to give a slightly better finish, I think. And if you go into the profiles for metallic as well, check on the ink limits that it's using for metallic. It's often that the metallic will look better at slightly lower ink levels, somewhere between sort of 30–40%, whereas most inks tend to work at between 80 and 100%, for example. So you can go into the profile and check the ink limits if you know where you're sort of going in VersaWorks with that. But also, you know, the metallics are going to take on the property of whatever material you're printing onto. So if you print onto a nice glossy vinyl, the metallic will look a bit glossier. If you print onto, you know, a matte canvas, they're probably not going to look quite as nice as they might on a sort of polished finish, I guess. Is there any way to reduce the 20 to 30mm automatic gap between print jobs using VersaWorks? Yes, there is. I will jump into VersaWorks and go through that if you like, but I'll just check what the setting is for you and just mention it to you now. Just give me 2 seconds. I think it's in the, bear with me, if we go to the printer controls, so open up your job settings, go into the printer controls, and at the top there's an option that says General, and under there it says Cut Sheet After Output and Use Custom Settings. If you select the Use Custom Settings, there's an option there that says Page Space. That page space is the gap between sending one job and sending another job. So it looks like by default in BN-20 it's 20 mil. You could put that to 0. If you put it to 0 though, your jobs will be right next to each other. So you could lower it down to 10 to save on your space there as well. Do you know there isn't a similar feature on it? There is a similar feature. I'm sorry, just catching up on what you've written there, Helen, but I've just been into VersaWorks and it's available for mine. It could be down to the profile that you had set. I'm not sure. Always check that you're up to date with the latest software as well. So at the moment we've got VersaWorks 6, which was released a month ago, something like that, which is a brand new RIP. Okay, so it went VersaWorks, then it went VersaWorks Dual, now it's VersaWorks 6. And updating your software to the latest version will always help. But I've just gone into mine and checked, and it's there. So if it's not working for yours, I'm not 100%. Maybe try a different profile. Maybe just check a few different materials and check that there's not something that you've missed. Similar question to Helen's. Can't the nozzle tests run across the page rather than keep scrolling and wasting so much vinyl?
Sadly not. What you can do, as others have mentioned, is if you cut your material into an A4, piece or whatever, you can rotate that around in the machine to keep using different parts of it. Unfortunately, not. There's not an option currently for moving the test print across the width.
No, not on the BN-20, unfortunately. On the newer, larger machines, they do have an option where it's been introduced where you can choose to go across the feed rather than, across the scan rather than the feed, but not on the BN-20 at the moment. So the only way is to do it manually, which is a bit of a pain. So no, not at the moment, unfortunately. I'm running VersaWorks Dual, so we'll update. Yeah, you can update to VersaWorks 6 by going to the Roland website, and then there's an upgrade version option where it'll talk you through the upgrade. As you go through the upgrade to VersaWorks 6, you can have there's a migration tool as well to migrate your profiles from one software to the other, and you can save your jobs and re-import them as well into VersaWorks 6, which is great. And one of the key benefits, well, there's a bunch of key benefits to getting VersaWorks 6. But one of the ones that you'll notice immediately when you open it up is that there are now 5 queues. So there's queues A, B, C, D, and E, rather than just queues A and B, which means you can set those up with presets for your different materials and organize your jobs nicely, each with their own input folder as well, so you can sort of really automate your workflow. It's also a 64-bit software, so it will have much quicker running speeds and processing speeds as well. Yeah, something like transparency is there working better with Dual and 6. Yeah, definitely. So that was a big part about Dual. Refers to having a dual core, meaning that it can natively process both or sort of main file formats, PDF and EPS, or PostScript even, natively rather than transferring one into a different engine, and they sort of eradicated that issue, I guess. But yeah, the new software, if you like, I'll just quickly share my screen with you, and I can show you just what it looks like if you guys haven't seen it. And let's have a quick look. So here we go. This is VersaWorks 6. So it looks very similar to VersaWorks. It's the same kind of layout and everything. I've only got the BN-20 connected at the moment, but again, you can have 4 devices connected. You've got the different queues here. So I've got queue A, B, C, D, E. I've only got jobs in my QA at the moment here.
Can't see the screen at the moment.
Just give it a minute. It should catch up. And just try again a minute. Sometimes the screen sharing when you're doing it live is sort of the slowest thing that happens when you're running live. But can you see that now? Hopefully you guys can see that now. It's showing me in my software that it's showing you the right screen. So hopefully you can. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so if I just jump back to QA here, as I said, you've got the option for up to 5 different queues. They've just kind of updated the UI, so it looks a bit cleaner, the icons look a bit nicer, but the workflow is still the same. So if I open up a job, for example, here, again, the layout looks very similar. The icons are just a bit cleaner, but they are all the same. There is a new feature in there about printer matching. So if you did have multiples of the same printer, you can print an output test from one, and you can use that as the input color reference for the others and match colors across devices. And you can also print a test when you first buy your machine and use that as the reference as the machine gets older. So that was a very quick explanation of a new feature, but it's something that's built into the software, so that is something that's available. As we take a look down, so I'm just looking through some of the job settings here just to check if there's anything else that I might be able to show you that's new. If you've got white or metallic inks, you do have this generate special color plate option at the bottom. So if you're creating your white or your metallic data within your design software, you also have the option to develop that within the RIP. And there's 3 options for how you do that. If we take a look at this logo here, we just go back and choose a clear. I need to choose a color. What material we've got here? Bear with me a minute. clear film, and let's choose white, or sorry, metallic even. So this design, hopefully you can see on the screen here, that is now showing that there's no data. That was a black logo showing the BN-20 logo. And I've just chosen the metallic profile, so it's showing me that there's no metallic data within that job. I'll go down to the special color box right at the bottom here, and then the first option, it says generate special color. Now hopefully on the screen you should be able to see where it says VersaSTUDIO BN-20 again, in that sort of light grey. That's showing me that it's going to put metallic ink underneath where there was black ink within the design. So the option there was for putting ink where the print area is. You've also got outside the print area, just turns an invert there, or the entire image. So you can generate that within the RIP, which is a really useful tool. Otherwise, all the features are the same pretty much. The bigger difference, as I said, being that it's a 64-bit native software, and the fact that you've got those 5 queues with 5 different inputs, so you can create presets for all your different outputs. All right, that was just a quick overview anyway of VersaWorks 6, which, as I said, is a free upgrade and will come with new purchases of machines from now. But does anybody have any more questions? We've got another, we'll sort of overrun now a little bit, so if anybody's got any quick questions for us, we'll answer those. If not, thank you very much for joining us. Hope you found it useful. If there's any further questions, you can always get in touch with ourselves, Roland Care, the Academy, the guys here. As I said, the forum, YouTube, or get in touch with your local Roland offices as well. Thanks for joining us. Have a good day, evening, afternoon, wherever else. Oh, sorry, quick one that's popped up there. We'll answer that one quickly. Is it advisable to use the perf cut function? Yes, you can use the perf cut function. However, the BN-20 is not the most powerful machine for doing so. That's all I'd say. The cut mechanism on the BN-20 means that it has to wind down the blade, cut, and then wind up. So it won't be the quickest. And also the force in this isn't quite as, the mechanism isn't quite as good as it is in some of the bigger machines. But yes, you can use the perf cut function. You can perf cut your stickers. It sometimes takes a little while just to get your settings arranged perfectly. But yes, you can use the perf cut function. If you're using really thick materials, then it might not handle those so well. Whenever you use the perf cut function, it is going to dull your blades quicker, and it will use up your cutting strip quicker, because inevitably you have to cut all the way through the material, which means you cut into your backing sheet. So, sorry, into your cutting strip. So they will need to be replaced quicker, but you can do it. I mean, there's no reason.
There's no reason it's capable of doing it. It's just, yeah, as Joe said, that if it was going to be something we're going to do a lot of, it would probably best advice would be to pair the machine with a dedicated cutter for doing that, and it will speed up the workflow no end, and an actual dedicated cutter will potentially be better for it, or better designed for it, rather, I should say.
Yeah. Brilliant. But as I said, hope that's been useful. These sessions are recorded. However, we're still working on a place on our website to host them for you, so you'll be able to watch them back later. What I might do for this one is I will make it available for the next week, just to you guys who have watched it. Okay, I can do that within the software, but only for a week. And then later on, we'll have all of the other webinars up. And as I said, if you want to get in touch for any reason, you can find us via our local communications, calling us up at the office, wherever. Get in touch. I've also got a Facebook account, a work Facebook account, which is Joe Roland DG, so feel free to get in touch. Otherwise, thanks for joining us, and have a nice evening.
Thank you very much.
That's it from us. Cheers.